Welcome to the Intuition Manifesto, and we are live. And I want to thank you for joining us, tuning in, tapping in, and turning on to the Intuition Manifesto Masterclass. Today's class is about state control. So let's jump right in. I want to thank you all for participating. I see that Jan, thank you for tuning in. From, I think, is it Kansas or from Oklahoma? Oklahoma. So excited to have you here tonight. And we have Terry from Hawaii. And we have also Martha. I think Martha is from, it's either Georgia or Virginia.
Boston.
Boston. I think it was that region of the country.
I know.
Fantastic. Well, I'm so happy and excited to have you guys here today. I'm excited because yesterday also, we published Intuition Manifesto on the 22nd of February, and I finally got my hard copies yesterday. So I'm like, yay. So the hard copies are finally, I don't know who else has physical copies of the hard copy, but I actually now have my own hard copy of the hardcover, which is exciting for me.
Great.
So let's dive in deep and let's start talking about state control. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Please let me know if you're able to see the, let's see, I'm going to first share with you. You know what? I'm going to start off with this screen first, and then I'll actually show you another screen that actually shows you the different brainwave states. So we're going to start off, and I've got a couple of little sayings here. I am a big fan of quotes from famous people who I admire and I respect. And I love this quote. I ran into it not too long ago, and it's by Albert Einstein. And it says, "Stay away from negative people. They have a problem for every solution." And when I read that, that kind of struck a funny bone with me because it is so true. Sometimes people are so ferreted in the negative that no matter how many solutions you give them, they keep on coming up with other problems and they just want to argue for their limitations. And so one of the things that I have learned is that if someone wants to argue for their limitations, then there's no sense in my trying to convince them or argue with them or create a resistance of whatever it is that they're pushing up against. If they want to argue for their limitations, they're more than welcome to keep their arguments with them because we all have free will. And it's not my job to convince anyone of anything. So I thought it was a great saying by Albert Einstein. And so I saw this this earlier in the week too, and I thought this is so perfect to share with you guys tonight. And it says here that life is about the proper perspective. And we talk a lot about, okay, we've got Jennifer that's joining us here, Jennifer Orban. I'm curious if she's still traveling in Mexico or if she's back in Orange County. Welcome to the class, Jennifer.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. And are you back in Orange County? Or are you still traveling in Puerto Vallarta?
I'm actually, we're at the airport and it's delayed. I'm in Puerto Vallarta in the airport and it's delayed.
Oh my gosh.
My flight would have been like about an hour ago. So,
all righty.
Yeah. Well, I could at least watch you. That's great.
At least you can join us. So
yeah, definitely.
So I'm so glad you're able to tune in and see things have a funny way of working themselves out for the best. So you were still able to tune into this.
I heard, I heard something about this is coincidence. I heard another Zoom session today, or they were giving some advice and they were mentioning how airports, sometimes there could be delays and then it just happened, right?
Yeah. And, I talk about that in the Intuition Manifesto. It's like once you become aware and you start to tap into your intuition and you allow yourself to be clear about your clear intention about what it is that you want, and you have that elevated emotion where sometimes you have unwanted things that happen. But in the face of something unwanted, you can have a really awesome, spectacular thing that you didn't anticipate come out from that unwanted situation. So for example, like in your particular case, you really weren't planning on this being delayed. However, the positive upside of this is that you're able to tune into this live broadcast and participate in the master class. Otherwise, you would catch it on replay, of course. But so often we sometimes, we're like ferreted in having the clear intention and cementing in more of the unwanted instead of being able to glean some of the wonderful, awesome things that are there as a byproduct of that change. And we talked about how we zigzag. It's never a linear line, to success from point A to point B. It's always A to B to C to D, and you're zigzagging. Sometimes your zig is longer than your zag. Other times you have short zigzag, but you're going to be zigzagging your way till you get to the point where you're manifesting as you continue through your process, right? And so this kind of falls in line with what I was about to talk about next, which has to do with perspective. We were talking about negative perspectives and positive perspectives. And this particular saying here, I'm going to share with you. Can you all see the screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Mm-hmm. So the first part, life is about the proper perspective. So one perspective is you're going to start a business. It's like $999 and someone will say, oh, that's too much. Then you go to buy, that same person will go and they'll not even bat an eye at spending $999 for their iPhone. Oh, like they got to have it. And even though that same person may have been complaining maybe month after month, year after year about wanting to change their career, wanting to change whatever it is that they're doing in business, or perhaps they've been wanting to start a business for a long time. And now they have an opportunity to start a business and it's going to be basically $1,000. And that $1,000 is like not even a thought in their mind if they have to replace their iPhone or their Android for that matter. But when it comes to a business, now all of a sudden they're like, oh, that's too much. Health, let's say healthy groceries, instead of, let's say you're going to spend $100 on our organic food that's all real and alive. And we're not talking, about TV dinners. We're talking about real live healthy food for you. And maybe you think, well, oh my gosh, it's like $100 for that. It's like, that's way too much. But yet you don't bat an eye at going out to dinner and for two people spending $100. And there it's like, of course, you're going to spend, drinks and a nice dinner, easily $50 a person. Got to have it. It's perspective. You watch maybe 2 hours of Netflix a night, and you'll watch maybe even one more episode, maybe even get it to 2 hours and 40 minutes, or maybe 3 hours. But maybe you're not willing to spend the same 2 hours every night to build a new skill, to learn a new thing, because now for that, you're too busy. So again, it's a matter of perspective. And life is a series of decisions we make, and those decisions point us in the direction of our life, which way we'll go. And I kind of feel like I'm being a little bit of a scratch record because I talk a lot about turning the other cheek and being in your left mind, as opposed to being in your right mind. And if you're in your left mind, where you are very much entrenched in your experience, your whatever academic studies that you've had, whatever life experiences you've had, and you're always anchored and leaning primarily on that, and you're facing right now a lot of unwanted, I suggest that you turn the other cheek and that you be in your right mind. And we talk about Jill Bolte Taylor in the Intuition Manifesto, who is a neuroanatomist. She actually wrote the book, A Stroke of Insight. As you guys know, she talks about not just her experience as a neuroanatomist who dealt with stroke victims, but she herself experienced a stroke. And then she got to witness understanding what was happening neurophysiologically inside of her brain, recognizing that she must be having a stroke that was affecting her left hemisphere of her brain. And so she talks about the difference between being in your left brain. That's where, again, your critical thinking is. That's where your memories are stored. That's where anything you've ever learned from book knowledge or an experience, it's all filed on the left, as opposed to being in your right mind. That's where we're tuned in, tapped in, turned on into the infinite realm of infinite intelligence. That's the realm of there's no limits there. That is the realm in which we are able to tune in, tap in, and turn on into our subconscious mind. That's where we are highly intuitive, what I like to call intuicognizant, which is a combination of intuition and gnosis, which is knowledge. That's a profound state of knowing. And so there you have no limits. And so I talked about also recently how one of the revelations that I had in the month of December, on the heels of my having bought a bracelet that happened to have the infinity symbol, and then how I was shown, let's see, I think I have an infinity symbol. I've shown you, you all know what an infinity symbol looks like, so I'm not going to draw that out, but you know that it's a figure 8 and it goes this way, right? And so in that infinity symbol, what I saw in meditation was that without exception, we are socialized and we're conditioned in this Western world to lean on the left side, to lean on our book knowledge, to lean on the experts. Everything is very 3D, matter to matter. Everything is also very limited, because I don't care whether it's me or any other expert that's, the 7 billion people that we have on the planet. Our book knowledge, our experience, whatever we've experienced throughout our life is by definition limited. And without exception, we tend to lean on that all the time. And then when there's a crisis, when there's an emergency, when there's something unwanted that is a high, fight or flight situation where now you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And when you've exhausted everything that you know from your left brain perspective to do, then you get on your knees, you put your hands together and you're like, oh God, dear, help me. Even atheists who don't believe in God, in a moment of crisis will say, if there is a God, now they start the bartering, they start the negotiating, and they're like starting to plead, like, if there is a God, please help. And then incredible things, they're getting out of their left brain because they're finally surrendering. And now, because of circumstances, with exception, they're now in their right mind. And so the thing is, if we flip it around and instead of being without exception in our left brain in this direction all the time, if we turn the other cheek and stay in our right mind and to choose, use our free will. That's the greatest power that humans have, is our free will. If you use your free will to take that light of consciousness, which is normally like a big floodlight, where the light's just shining everywhere, and now you're going to focus it like a laser beam. Now you have a clear intention of what your goal, your target, or your dream is. And now you're able to effectuate having the unlimited quantum realm available to you to express to you in that moment what's absolutely perfect, that maybe usually it doesn't make sense, as I talked about in the book, like with April. From $9 an hour to 9 million. Everything that she took steps on that were intuitively guided, none of it ever made sense, but she followed it. And the rest is history. You guys all know because you all read the book. So life is, in effect, a series of decisions we make. Those decisions point us in the direction that our life will go. So 1% of the world, this is very interesting, 1% control the world, 4% are puppets, 90% are asleep, and 5% know what's going on and are trying to wake up the 90%. And the 1% don't want the 5% waking up the masses. But that's an individual choice. That's something that we can choose. And if you haven't chosen it before, you can choose it in this moment. Or you don't have to choose it at all. You can continue to stay as you are if you want everything to stay the same. But if you're looking to access higher forms of intelligence and you want that infinite realm to be at your fingertips, day by day, every way, in every way, shape, or form, then tapping into your intuition, being in your right mind, as you know, is the way to do it. So Wayne Dyer has this great saying that I've loved for years and years. And he says that the highest form of ignorance is when you reject something you don't know anything about. What I have come to recognize and realize is that a lot of people don't know a lot about intuition, and even less so about their own intuition. And people tend to deny their own intuition. And sometimes they chalk it off to it being silly superstition or nonsense or something that's airy-fairy. And yet every single human being has intuition. Every single one of us have had experiences with our intuition that we knew without a shadow of a doubt that it was our intuition that was speaking to us. We've had times that we listened to our intuition and we were so glad that we did. And there are times that a lot of us, we heard our intuition and we didn't act upon that intuitive knowingness. And then we're like, oh man, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. I knew it. I knew that was a red flag and I didn't. You fill in the blank. And so as you choose to test it, you're going to find that as you follow your intuition more and more, it is never, ever, ever wrong. And when in doubt, you can always ask for more signs. And so we're going to get into that aspect of being able to effectuate state control and how to use that and to tap into your intuition and how to get into a better feeling state. So I want to share with you something here, because I know that a lot of us have had Judeo-Christian belief systems, whether it's Jewish, Christian, or Catholic belief systems. A lot of us are influenced by one of those three religions. Those are the three. I know some about Taoism, and I know a little bit also about Buddhism, because I've had some of my mentors who are Taoists or who are Buddhist monks and so forth. However, we've probably have heard in English, we usually translate this particular phrase that's in the Bible, that's in Proverbs, which is usually said in Proverbs 9:10, it's the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, or the fear of the Lord is our strength. Now, being the wordsmith that I am, and many of you know that my father speaks 7 languages. One of them is Hebrew. He also speaks Greek. And one of the things that every time I get together with my dad, like I was just with him on, Sunday, because it was Easter, of course, Passover. So he always gives us scriptures, and he talks about the Hebrew root words and so forth. Now, this is one that I, in my own studies, I've come aware of. And so I wanted to share it with you guys, because in English, words have power. And when we say certain things, we sometimes have certain feelings, certain connotations, certain cultural references that are surrounding a particular word. So sometimes, like I used to say, I don't say this anymore, but I used to say, I want a God-fearing man. Well, I don't want a God-fearing man. I want a God-loving man. If you look at the word fear in Hebrew, the word is yirah. So if you look at yirah, that means awe, reverence, and respect. So I put this here so that you guys could actually see that. You can do your own study. You can cut and paste this or type it into Google. If you want to check out Bible Gateway, it gives you every translation of the Bible, from King James to Standardized, Revised, to you name it. There's like 30, 40 different versions of the Bible. But you can see that the word yirah actually is translated into awe. It's actually awe, and it oftentimes is translated into fear, but it also means respect, reverence, and worship. Yet 99% of the time when this particular scripture is said in English, they always talk about the fear of the Lord. And my experience has always been, the fear of God, the fear of the Lord. And as a kid, I always thought that was a little perplexing, because my physical father, I never had fear of my father. I had love for my father, but I wasn't afraid of my dad. My dad never lifted a finger, never hit me. So my dad was a really cool guy. He still is a really cool guy. There's a lot of other people separate from me who also consider him a father figure and a mentor. And so it seemed to me, it's like, wow, if God is love and God is this incredible, being, why would I have to be afraid and cower, from God? That kind of never really resonated or sat well with me. Now, I'm bringing a lot of attention to this particular thing because I keep on sharing with you guys that there's a great deal of power in our words. And if you are thinking that you have to be afraid of, that you have to be in fear of whether it's God, the creator, infinite source intelligence, whatever your label is, Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim, Adonai, whatever, that label that you're assigning to that power that has put together the entire universe, that's responsible for my sitting here, your sitting here as well. Remember that where the vibrational frequency of fear on the Hawkins scale is only 100 hertz frequency, 100. If you look at love as a vibrational frequency, that's at 528 hertz frequency. So the wave states for fear are only at 100, and love is at 500. That's 428 hertz higher than fear, which is why you can't have a fear state and a love state occupying the same space. They're incoherent. There's dissonance between the two. You can't have the feeling of love and the feeling of fear at the same time. You have to pick one or the other. So either you're in fear or you're in love. And in order for us to heal, in order for us to create, whether you want to use the word manifestation, whether you want to use creation, at the core, we are all creating either dissonance or resonance, fear or love. There's fear, there's shame, there's guilt, there's sadness, there's grief, there's, those, I would say they're lower vibrational frequencies, all of which are under 100 hertz. Shame and guilt is less than 100 hertz. So that's worse than fear. That's why they don't feel good, but they're giving you valuable information. And for those of you who tuned into the Gridwork series, that 5-week series, plus an intro, which was a total of 6 weeks, Clint Baggett told us very clearly that he recognized in a specific moment in time that his negative emotion of anger was actually the manifestation of an ask. So anytime you are feeling something unwanted, maybe you're feeling indifferent, maybe you're feeling instead of indifferent, maybe you're feeling resentment, maybe you're feeling off-put by something, anything less than love that doesn't feel good, maybe you're feeling jealousy. There's different shades which fear can manifest, in different shades of fear. Like hurry and worry are shades of fear. I call hurry and worry the offsprings of fear, because hurry implies that you have a fear that there's not enough time, or that you're going to fall short. There's not enough of you, or whatever it is you're doing is not enough, so that you're going to have a shortage. You're going to suffer a negative consequence because you're falling short of something you're trying to accomplish. That's what that fear of hurry is, which is almost the same feeling as hurry is worry. You're worried that you're not going to be enough. You're worried. Worry is just the evidence of fear of something not being to your liking once you arrive to whatever point in time. So if you also recognize that all of those emotions are all manifestations of your ego going, okay, based on the history that you've lived, I want to keep you in the familiar past. So we're going to keep you entrenched. We're going to use hurry. We're going to use worry. We're going to use fear. We're going to use jealousy. We're going to use anger. We're going to use sadness. We're going to use frustration, grief, jealousy, indifference, whatever of those emotions, which are just an emotional ask for wanting to feel happy, for wanting to feel joy, for wanting to feel satisfaction, for wanting to feel safe, for wanting to feel secure, for wanting to feel appreciated, for wanting to feel acknowledged. Sometimes we just want to be seen and acknowledged for what it is that we're doing, for the value that you're showing up for in one other person's life, or maybe in your work environment. Maybe someone in your work environment has the habit of always stealing your idea and taking the credit. And you just wish for once, it's like, gee whiz, I always come up with these ideas and so always takes all the glory and all the prize, and they seem to get the promotions. Why is it that no one stands up for me? Or why isn't it that I can stand up for myself and say, you know what, I can go to the head honcho that is making those decisions and saying, you know what, actually, I'm the one that came up with that idea. Stand up for yourself and now empower yourself so that you don't need to be subject to that type of situation anymore. So we're going to talk tonight where the primary thing is we're talking about state control. So in order to get into the issues of state control, we're going to go through the review of the 5 different brainwave states. Okay. And so as we go into the 5 brainwave states, I have them listed here as alpha, beta, delta, gamma, theta. However, I'm going to say that we should I like to always start with delta, theta. It's like delta, theta, alpha. I think of it as data and then BG. Like, I don't know if any of you guys watch Star Trek, but do you remember the Star Trek character Data? And Data was part cyborg, part kind of human, but he was mostly a robot. And he had a really tall, long, characteristically very engineer type forehead, which is very data driven. And so I always think of data. So D for data for delta, then theta, the data, and then alpha, and then BG, as in the Bee Gees, the musical group, then beta, and then gamma. So let's talk a little bit about the first brainwave state, and we're going to talk about delta. And this is the brainwave state that we all enter in every single night. It's 0.5 to 4 hertz frequency. So that's a very slow brainwave frequency. I'm going to share with you another screen. I'm going to do a new share. I'm going to show here, this is what your delta. Okay, so if you go to the bottom here, right here, this is the delta brainwave frequency. As you quickly observe from the lowest to the highest brainwave frequency, you see that the frequency is much less at the delta brainwave state. You see how it peaks basically once. This would be a second low peak, and this would be a third peak. The frequency, there's only 3 peaks in this delta brainwave state over this time frame right here. If you go into the theta brainwave state, that's 4 to 8 hertz. And you see that the frequency is more often. We have more peaks here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 7 peaks here, which falls in the 4 to 8 range. The most would be 8. The least would be 4. Just to bring your attention, if you look here, 4 was the maximum, and we have 1, 2, 3 here. So the maximum was 4. Going up to, so that you start to understand, you can assign a meaning and assign understanding to what it is that your brain is doing. And then we're going to assign a feeling state. You're going to become aware, realizing and understanding what it is that your brain is doing and the sensation that you feel in your body when you're in that state, so that you can start to embrace state control and use it for your benefit. So the third state is alpha. And in alpha, you see that we have 8 to 13 hertz. So there's a greater frequency. You notice that more frequently, more often, you have more peaks. So here, let's count together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, little one, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 peaks in this brainwave frequency. Okay. And we're going to do a deeper dive and explain a little bit more what that actually means to you and what it feels like throughout your day. So this is just kind of a graphic overview to give you an idea what it is that we're going to be discussing. Okay. And then if you have any questions, just raise up your hands and we'll stop so that you don't forget what it is that you have a question on. So if you have something that either doesn't make sense or is confusing or isn't clear, or you have an insight that you want to bring to the table and make a comment about, or maybe double check, let me know and we will go ahead and clarify that. If it's above my pay grade, which it's possible that it's above my pay grade, we actually do have a doctor here that's on this class with us, so we can potentially also tap into that brain tank. But moving on here, the alpha brainwave state is 8 to 13 hertz. So we counted out the peaks here of the number of times, how frequently your brain beats. Because just like your heart, if you were to take your two fingers and you put right on your wrist, I don't know if you guys can see, we will take our pulse from taking our two fingers and putting it right at our wrist, right here along this meridian here. You can feel the rate of your pulse. And that pulse rate is in alignment with your heart rate. And just as your heart pulses and your veins pulse and your aorta, for example, you have your carotid artery right here under your neck. A lot of athletes use this, when they're working out before, during, and after. You can feel the pulse of your heart. That pulse, your brain also pulsates, and that's what this is evidencing. So that's your alpha brainwave state. So now moving on to your beta brainwave state, which happens to be the brainwave state that we're in during this broadcast. Myself, because I'm the speaker, I'm the one who's teaching and training. You guys, because you're the guys who are observing and learning and absorbing this information. So there's 32, I think you get the gist. We're not going to take the time to count all of these peaks here. 1, 2, 3, you can pretty much see them. There's probably, if I had to guess, I would say there's probably 30, following how the other ones here are 1 or 2 less than the maximum on here. But there's 32, up to 32 frequencies of peaks and pulses of your brain in a beta brainwave state. It's kind of a mouthful, a beta brainwave state. Okay, so in a lower beta brainwave state, you are in a heightened, conscious, alert, thinking state. You're excited, you're conscious when you're at work during the day, every day as you're working, you're in a beta brainwave state. If you go to take a little break after working, like when you go on your lunch break or go take a coffee break or a water break, then your brain slips into alpha. It relaxes because you're not in that focused attention state. Okay, so now we're going to go up to a gamma brainwave state. This is an extraordinary state. We oftentimes see this actually every single time we have a group of us that meditate. We see this, and we know that we see this because we have it verified because it's been measured. When we're at a week-long event with Dr. Joe and his scientists, they are actually measuring it. So we actually have evidence through the brain scans. And so we are able to confirm that we're in a gamma brainwave state. And as you meditate more and more, as you know what the feeling is like to be in a gamma brainwave state, then you know by the sensations, what it is that you're feeling and experiencing, you know that you're in a high gamma brainwave state. So this chart, I'm not going to say that it's wrong or that it's erroneous or that it's mistaken, but this is a standard chart for brainwaves. That being said, I have actually seen with my own 2 eyes, people who've had their brain waves measured at 300, 400 hertz frequency, even a little over 400 frequency. Now, statistically, the probability that anyone will ever have that in the general population, it's supposed to be allegedly impossible, or it's something that you only see when someone's having a grand mal seizure. However, for those of us who are more privy to large groups of meditators where there's 1,300 to 2,200 of us in a monastery, in a conference center where we're all meditating at the same time. There is, I don't know what the percentage of the meditators that are there, but there's a very high percentage of people who go into the gamma brainwave state. And I've been witness to scientists who actually thought that these people were seizing. And then, of course, the scientists who are more experienced are like, no. We know that they're having a profound mystical experience. They're getting a biological upgrade, et cetera, et cetera. They're accessing an infinite well of information. Their neurophysiology, their neurochemistry is all being affected in this gamma brainwave state. Okay, so now that if you guys want to take a screenshot of this, be more than happy to do so. Otherwise, you can get a screenshot of this in the replay. Okay, so let's go back to our other document over here. So in the theta, I'm sorry, let's start off with delta. Can everybody see this pretty good, or do you think I should make the lettering a little bit bigger so that you can read it better? Is that okay?
It's good.
Okay.
It's good.
Okay, so otherwise I'll make it larger. So in the delta brainwave state, we already talked about how it's 0.5 to 4 hertz frequency. And now you understand what relevance the word frequency has and what the unit of hertz is trying to measure. It's how frequent that pulse beats, which is coming from your brain. So as your brain is beating. So this is the greatest amplitude and the slowest frequency. And during your sleep state, we are all in delta. Every single person experiences the delta brainwave state when you go to sleep. And it peaks while in a restorative and repair cycle, while you're not in a dream state. So I want to really bring attention to this because a lot of people think that when you're asleep, that you're completely at rest just because you are sleeping. But guess what? Your heart is still beating. Your lungs are still inhaling and exhaling. There's all sorts of organ systems that are still moving. Your eyes are still moving left and right, up and down. All sorts of different things are taking place. So even though your vitals drop when you sleep, even your body temperature drops as you sleep, sometimes 1 or 2 degrees. Your pulse, your heart rate, your respirations all drop while you're sleeping. There are exceptions to that, depending on, if somebody has sleep apnea and you can't breathe, there are some exceptions to that. But typically, when you go into a sleep state, your vitals all drop. Okay. And so your body is not completely at rest while sleeping. Your organs are still functioning and your body is taking time while not in a dream state to restore, to repair, to rejuvenate your entire biochemistry and your neurophysiology top to bottom. Also, there's processing of, we talk about, for those of you who are more familiar with the PSMO method that I've talked extensively about on Love and Money Secrets TV and so forth, and I talk about also in the Intuition Manifesto, you have REM cycles, which is your rapid eye movement. And so as part of your neurosomatic systems of the body, you have mechanical functions, mechanoreceptive aspects of how your brain uses your vision, your hearing, your smell, your taste, and the kinesthetic feeling of not just your hands and your gut feeling, which is interoceptive, but also the feeling throughout your body in terms of all of your skin, the feeling inside of your body, and so on and so forth. So all of these things are being resolved and dissolved, which is why your eyes go back and forth. It's literally engaging your right and your left hemisphere to resolve and dissolve things as you are sleeping, which can't be done while you're in an awake state. Because when you're awake, you have to focus on whatever it is. If you're driving, you have to focus on driving. So your eyes can't be going back and forth, left to right, and taking care of that. It's almost, it's very similar to your computer. It's amazing to me how many things we have in the 3D world that mimic and try to emulate what's actually going on inside of our bodies. They're being mimicked on the outside. So a lot of you guys will notice that if you have a desktop or a laptop computer and you are sometimes are aware of how your system will start to back up things, and you'll hear how the disks in your hard drive or your portable hard drive, you'll hear like little knocks and pings and so forth, because there's activity that's going on while you're not using your computer. You're not even touching your computer, and you'll hear sounds. The same thing is true with our body. Our brain is never completely at rest. As evidenced by the delta state, even when you're asleep, the slowest frequency is 0.5 hertz. It's pretty slow, 0.5 compared to 100 hertz at gamma, but it's still moving and grooving. It's still getting stuff done, enough so that you can restore, you can rejuvenate, you can regenerate, and you can heal the body. That's also why sleep is so important. Our brain needs that in order to balance and regulate the mechanoreceptive aspects of how the brain is running the entire, we're going to call it CPU. Your entire body is like a CPU. So it's trying to balance everything, defrag, whatever underlying programs that have been dormant that need to be refreshed and updated. It's taking care of that while you're sleeping. This is also when your cells duplicate the stem cells, and your stem cells are the original blueprint to replicate your skin so that your skin continues to be as supple and as beautiful as it was before. Everything turns over. We have different, maybe next week I'll bring a schedule to show you there's different schedules, like your stomach regenerates much faster than, let's say, your liver or your kidney or your lungs or your brain cells. Everything has a different rate of your bone. It's been said that it's impossible to grow 2 to 3 centimeters of bone during the course of a year, that it would take 2 or 3 years. Yet I've known people who in 10 weeks, they grew 3 centimeters of bone. And because of that, they didn't have to have their leg amputated, all sorts of other different things. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move on. So that's our delta brainwave state. So moving on to the next brainwave state, we're going to talk about the theta brainwave state. Let me get this a little. Actually, I'm going to put this to right here. Okay, so in the theta brainwave state, it's one of my favorite brainwave states. I'm partial to theta because for me, this is an awesome state to create, whether it's healing or even 3D manifestation. There's really no limits as to what you can manifest. But in the theta brainwave state, you're going to a frequency of 5 to 8 cycles a second. That means that you're going to have up to 8 beats inside your brain. Every now and then, I don't know if other people notice this, but sometimes when I'm going to sleep, I will feel my brain pulsing. It's like, instead of it being limited to my heartbeat, I can actually feel it inside of my head. Not always, but and I don't know why I can feel it sometimes and why I can't others, but I do notice that sometimes you can feel it inside your head. And I've never bothered to count. So I'm geeky, but I'm not that geeky. So anyhow, but your brain will pulse to the rate of 5 to 8 cycles per second. The right and your left brain hemispheres will achieve synchronization during the theta brainwave state. Okay. At this point, it's probably one of the reasons why I like theta brainwave state so much, because that's the dream, like the daydreaming state. True story. When I was in elementary school, the teachers would call my mother in fairly often to, call me to the table to stop daydreaming during school, because sometimes it would usually happen, I'd say in the early afternoon, but the teacher was right in front of me, and then I would look out the window and I was gone. I was in a different la la land. It's like another world of fantasy. I didn't even feel like I was physically there. And apparently I did that kind of a lot. So oftentimes the teacher would call my mother in and admonish me for daydreaming. Luckily, it got called to my attention, but I never got punished for it. And thank goodness, unlike my first grade, what I shared with you guys that happened to me in first grade, that I actually got paddled by the principal of my school. I never got paddled, or that only happened once, but I did daydream. And so the theta brainwave state is, daydreaming is very prevalent in this state. While you're sleeping, your brain goes into a theta brainwave state, which is sometimes a very surreal, sometimes it feels as real as this state of awareness. This is also a state where you can receive creative inspiration. Unlike the previous brainwave state that we were talking about, you don't, in delta, you don't have to be asleep to be in theta. You can be alert, you can be relaxed and alert while you're in the theta brainwave state. So, and everybody goes into theta brainwave state every night when you go to sleep. This is also the creative side of your brain, where your brain likes to process improvising music, something I love to do. I love to improvise, whether it's playing an instrument or singing, where if you're into painting and drawing and doing artwork, improvising with paint, colors, textures, etc., different type of art forms, anything that is improvisational comedy, improvisational theater, extemporaneous, let's say if you're going to do, there's a form of acting where it's extemporaneous, where they just give the actors a plot, and then they don't have to follow a script. They don't have to recall from their left brain memory. They're simply improvising in the moment as if they were in that state of being. That is a theta brainwave state that they have to be in order to be into that creative process where they're in this make-believe, makeshift 3D improvisation. Also, improvisational writing. If you're doing automatic writing, the way the Intuition Manifesto came into being, I was in a theta brainwave state when it just all started to pour out. So this is characteristic of the theta brainwave state. I also want to bring to your attention improvisational dance. I can't begin to emphasize enough, because we're talking about state control. One of the fastest ways for you to get into a different state of being, if you're in a state that is unwanted and you want to shift your energy into a better state of being, that state control of moving your body is the quickest way. It's like, number one, the breath. Number two, moving your body. And instead of, everybody knows that if you're, the body posture of a depressed person, their head's down, their mouth is usually droopy down, their shoulders are down, their posture is kind of, poor. And someone who's confident, who's alert, who's happy, who's excited, they're upright, they're alert, they're smiling. They actually take up more space in wherever they're in. Instead of taking less space, they take more space. So the quickest thing that you can do is to change the rate at which you breathe. I would suggest 2 physiological sighs followed by a long exhale, which is the first part of the PSMO. One of the major reasons why the PSMO is so effective is because you're affecting state control, A, with the breath, B, with the physiology. The quickest way to change anything is not by your willpower, it's by body physiology, because that automatically changes your state. So by you're doing the PSMO in less than 3 minutes, you knock out any feelings of nervousness, self-criticism, any negative thoughts, feelings, emotions, jet lag, low energy, boom, in less than 3 minutes, you feel alive, you're invigorated, you're feeling much better. Same thing. If you do improvisational dance, where now you're moving around, you put some fun music, and you just allow yourself the luxury, the joy. You're paying the price of joy to feel the music. Maybe turn up the volume, turn up the bass. Let your body feel the vibration of the lower tones that are supporting the harmony, the melody, and the harmonics that create this beautiful sound along. Whether you have a singer or whether it's instrumental, doesn't matter, as long as it's pleasing to your ear, as long as you like the way it sounds, as long as you like the beat and the groove of that music, that's all that matters. So improvisational dance, you will be in a complete theta brainwave state. And don't be surprised if after you're done with that, if that lingers on and gives you a burst of creative inspiration, of insights, of intuitive knowingness, because that is part of the gateway to get into that altered, much better state of being. So this theta state is also another reason why I love it so much. It's because it's the gateway for you to get subconscious access to program yourself to whatever it is that you want. So whatever, we all have default programming because we were all programmed by our parents, by our caretakers, by our school, by our society, by our culture, by whatever TV shows we watched, whatever plays we attended, whatever make-believing we did, however we were treated or how we were treated and how we also treated our siblings, anyone we had a relationship with, our peer group in our neighborhood and at school, etc. All of those influences. That is a base level fundamental programming that everybody has. And you can overwrite that programming, just like I can delete right here. You see this word teeth? I can just go delete and I can go teeth. Now I overwrote it. Now it's all in caps. You're doing that exact same thing when you are in the theta brainwave state. And so repetitive processes, for example, routine tasks like driving. When you're driving your car, you're in a hypnagogic state, most likely. It's a repetitive action. You don't have to think a whole lot about what your feet are doing, about turning left and right. If you're an experienced driver, if you're a brand new driver, you're in the process of learning to drive, then you're in a hypervigilant state because you're trying to manage everything around you. But if you've been driving for 2-3 years or more, it's an automatic theta state of being, which many of you, I don't know how many of you have ever had this happen, where you're used to going home a certain way on the freeway, and then maybe you have a friend with you this time that's normally not in the car with you, and now you're driving as normal, and maybe you're not supposed to go home. Maybe you're supposed to go to a restaurant for drinks, or maybe you guys are going out to dinner, and you're caught up talking with your friend that's with you, and because you are engaged in that state, you're kind of on automatic pilot. It's almost like your internal GPS knows where to go and what to do. You don't really have to think about it. And instead of going to the restaurant that you were supposed to go to, you find yourself, oh my gosh, I got off the wrong exit. I always get off on that exit to go home. Then you have to jump back on the freeway, or maybe you missed it and you're like, wait a minute. I thought we were looking for such and such exit. You didn't even notice the exit. That's because you were in that theta state, that hypnagogic state. And so you're just enjoying yourself and you're kind of on autopilot. And so that is a theta brainwave state. For those of you who have actually driven a stick shift car, you have first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and reverse, right? So when you're doing that, you're in that theta state too, because you don't really have to think about first, second, third, fourth, downshifting, going reverse, forward. It's an automatic thing. Brushing your teeth, same thing. Anything that's a repetitive task. When you're washing your dishes, you're also in a theta state, provided that you're not shouting at kids or anything like that. If you're just solely focused on that activity, then you are in that theta state. And you can actually program yourself for all sorts of things. And you can actually create a meditative state for anything that you're doing. whether you're washing dishes, you're taking a bath. We're going to get into some aspects of state control using a bath technique that is a meditative bath technique that I think you guys are going to like. Okay. So the results now of being in theta state is you're going to have profound, serene sense of inner peace, of calmness, of centeredness, of emotional stability. It's not like you're thrilled and euphoric and joyous or sad. You're just very centered, very grounded, and you feel peace. You have a physical and emotional deep relaxation that also feels like a mental relaxation. In a theta brainwave state, you also have heightened memory. So one of the things that I like to do, and I'm going to suggest to you guys, you don't have to do it, but what I like to do anytime I'm whenever I'm listening to let's say if I go to a Dr. Joe week-long event, if I'm at a Dr. David Snyder class and I'm learning something new, anytime I'm in a learning state, I always put myself into a theta brainwave state because I don't want to have to memorize anything. I want to be able to have it be there, and at whenever I need it, I want it to bubble up on command. So I want to be in that state of not just learning, but I want to be able to control my ability to absorb and apply it effortlessly. So I set that intention and I do my breathing, and then I command myself to go into theta. And really cool things sometimes happen as I'm listening to the class, whoever it is that's teaching me. So you guys moving forward, you can do that as you're listening to these Intuition Manifesto Master classes. You can just choose to put yourself into theta state. Most of you, if not all of you, have already watched my theta state video. I think there's like 9,000 or 10,000 views on that thing. And I talk about how to get into theta state, how to know that you're in theta state without having a device, without having to have some sort of electronic outside component telling you that you're in theta state. You will feel and know that you're in theta state, okay? That's very, very important. So heightened memory, and it's heightened memory because of that theta state that you're in. You have increased intuition, increased inspiration, increased spiritual connection, because you do feel really connected because you're in your right mind. You also have a progressive physical and emotional healing aspect to that, because you have all sorts of neurochemistry and neurobiology that's taking place biochemically. You're going to have a sounder sleep as you use your theta state outside of your sleep state and you bring it into your wake state on purpose, where you're intending it. You're using your free will to choose it. So we have something called self-regulation units, SRUs. And everybody has a different number of SRUs that it's directly connected to your willpower. And so the more frustration you experience during the day, the more SRUs you use up. So if you can simply choose to lower your frustration by making things easier for yourself, like in this particular case, I'm suggesting that you use a theta brainwave state so that you can be exposed to new information, learn it, absorb it, and then be able to apply it without any effort so that it's seamless. It'll bubble up right when you need it. But you've told yourself to go into that theta brainwave state as you are listening and conditioning your body to this new state of being. We talked about sounder sleep. We talked about biochemical and neurochemical regulation that's optimized for health and longevity, including telomere length. We know this because it's been measured. And we also have the mitigation of stress, which means the lessening, the elimination of stress. The more you put yourself into a theta brainwave state, the less stress you have because you are fully relaxed head to toe, physically, emotionally, and your mind is also relaxed, which means that you won't have mental fatigue and you won't have anxiety, and all of those type of emotional states will start to dissolve and slowly but surely fade away. One of the other things about a theta state is that it's easy to go from a theta state from theta, either staying in theta, high theta, or going from theta to gamma, you can experience bliss, joy, fun, excitement, euphoria, like being enthralled and just thrilled. Kind of, it's an unexplainable feeling, but it is, the best way I would describe it is extreme joy, where you're just, oh my gosh, it's like, this is like, can I feel more joy? Can I feel more love than this? Is just like a really exciting, enthralling, invigorating sensation. The next thing is that in the theta state, one of the early on signs to me that I'm in theta state is when, as I'm doing my breaths and I'm commanding myself to go into theta state. And as you know, I always suggest that you roll your eyeballs up so that you're looking into the eyebrow section right above you. That automatically entrains your brain to go into theta state. And when you notice, Dr. Joe likes to talk about being no one, nobody, no thing, nowhere, no place, and no time. If you just become aware and are realizing as you sit there relaxed, it's almost like your arms disappear, or you're like, I can't tell that my hands are actually touching my lap. It's like I don't feel my actual arms. That's usually the first place I feel it. And then as I notice that I can't really feel my legs or my torso. And then sometimes I will feel like a downshift of energy. Again, I'll refer you guys. I referred to it in the Intuition Manifesto book. And I also will refer you to the video on the Love and Money Secrets TV channel, because I do a very thorough talk about how to know, how to get into a theta state and how to know that you're in a theta state. And again, you will have that sometimes at like a downshift of energy where it's kind of a strange feeling, because for me, it feels like I'm going down and up at the same time. And I feel oftentimes like my body is staying behind. And then it's like I'm being pulled away diagonally up in that direction. I don't always feel that. So part of the trick of in your consciousness going into theta state is don't get so caught up with things being exact every single time. Because after a while, first thing is that it's not going to be identical every single time, but you'll know and you'll trust that you're in theta state, because that feeling of not being a body, where you don't feel your physical body anymore and you're kind of detached from it, and you're just like this consciousness that is, you're able to see like 360 degrees in every direction. It's kind of a trippy feeling, but it's like a 360 degree in every direction, and wherever you put your focus and attention, you might rotate all the way around, which in a physical body, we'd actually have to physically move our entire body to do 360 degree on this plane, right? But in that plane, we're not confined by our body. So we can look 360 degrees in every direction and go out simultaneously. It's pretty fun. And as you play more with this and you practice it more, it becomes easier and easier and easier. So detachment from the physical sensation of the body. In essence, it's a state of more light. Yeah, that's another thing that I'd like to bring to your attention, is that when you're in that theta state, you are bringing more light into the physical aspect of your body. So as you allow more light to come into your body, your physical body feels lighter. And that's part of your ascending. You're moving upward as you are more and more detached from the physical body, which allows your 50 trillion cells to be reprogrammed and for you to be open and receptive to a biological upgrade, if you need a biological upgrade for your body to heal physically. Okay. So you're allowing more light at a cellular, even a microcellular level. And you have automatic as well as autonomic body optimized functions. Infinite experience is accessible at this state. Infinite experience, a creative imagination, accessing higher levels of knowing, intuition, and other revelations. This, I used to think infinite used to mean one thing, and I thought I had a notion of it, But as you keep on meditating and as you keep on doing these practices, you start to become aware that infinite really is, it's mind-boggling and just surprising how there are things that you're like, I could never have made. It's like what you saw, what you experienced, you're like, holy cow, there's like, I could have never, come up as creative as I think I am. I could have never come up with it in 3D. So it's like, how could that even be? So that's part of the fun and the excitement of going into these brainwave states. You're tuning into dimensions where answers and solutions to whatever challenges are presented to you are presented in a way, without a shadow of any kind of a doubt, without any confirmation, without any logic applied, without any experience or any back knowingness from your lifetime. You will know that it will lead to a success, and that that's your next step to take, or what you have to do. So theta is the right brain hemisphere. It's more active, and this results in a decrease in language, which is why you see more pictures. You can see words, but you'll see more images. You'll see more, you're going to see, sense, smell. Sometimes it's just a deep state of knowing. Some people don't see as many colors or as visions. It depends. If in the 3D world, let's say you're visual dominant, then in 5D world, you're going to be visual dominant. If you're more auditory, maybe auditory and visual are your two primaries in the 3D world, then you're going to be auditory and visual in the 5D world. My number one advice for you all is to just be open and accept and receive and embrace it all. Just be open and receptive, knowing that whatever is perfect for you will be presented to you in that theta brainwave state. Okay. Also, children from conception to 7, 8, could be as high as up to 10 years old, sometimes even a little older, are primarily in the theta brainwave state. So that is the time where they're being programmed. We're all programmed during this time frame in our childhood. Now that we're adults, we can choose to rewrite. We can override with a clear intention. We can reprogram whatever it is that we have as a clear intention. We add that elevated emotion so that we can actually bring into our 3D experience whatever it is that we're trying to create. Also in this theta brainwave state for children, they absorb, they learn, they take on imagination as if it's real, as if it were reality. That's why sometimes kids will make believe they're Superman or Batman. They think they can jump off of a roof, or they can jump off of a tree, or they try to breathe underwater and they actually start to drown because they think that others, they don't realize that they're holding their breaths. And so my younger son actually thought that his older siblings had gills like fish and that they could breathe underwater. And he actually he was actually in a pool and he was on a boogie board, and all the other kids, he was the youngest. And then all of a sudden, he went under on purpose, thinking that he could breathe underwater. And we had put him in swimming lessons, but for some reason, he started to drown. And so I had to literally jump in and pull him out of there. And then one of the first things he said, it's like, how come everybody else could breathe underwater and I can't? I'm like, oh my gosh, they're not breathing underwater. They're holding their breath underwater. You have to hold your breath. And so children that are in that theta brainwave state are in that realm where it's that world of in between that is kind of a make-believe, makeshift world, but they've got that slower brainwave state. They're 5 to 8 hertz of frequency. Okay. This is where our deep-rooted belief systems are implanted, and they're formed as a result of what we talked about before, all the different societal, parental, whatever it is that you've been exposed to in printed word, thought form, spoken form, read form, watched on TV, watched in movies, shows, plays, etc. Even playing whatever you did, playing make-believe. There are only 2 fears that we're born with. Only 2. Every other fear that we have is acquired after birth, afterwards. So the first is the fear of falling. Everybody has the inherent fear of falling. And the second is a fear of loud sounds. All other fears are acquired afterward. And that's why the ancient scriptures talk about, instruct a child in a specific way while they're a child, and once they're old, they won't depart from it. Why? Because it's fundamental. When you are a child up to 12 years of age, that is the foundation of who you're going to be, is based on how you've been conditioned. Also, I want to preface this because we don't want to demonize any parents. Most parents are trying to do the best that they can. When they know better, they do better. The reality is that even the best of parents, there's no one that is going to come into this earth plane experience and not experience some form of trauma. Some as a result of parenting, but sometimes it's just life circumstances. Maybe it wasn't even your parents. Maybe it was other circumstances. I'm not going to get into too much of that today. We have addressed it in the past, but just know that, everybody does the best they can, just as you are doing the best you can with your own life. And as you know better, you do better, okay? The next brainwave state is the alpha brainwave state. And in the alpha brainwave state, your frequency ranges, we talked about and we showed you on the graph, it's from 9 to 14 cycles per second. Both the left and the right brain hemispheres are synchronized during an alpha brainwave state. This is a state of being where your brain is fully active. I learned to play with the alpha brainwave state back in, I want to say it was like 1992, 3 or 4, when I started to read Jose Silva's mind-controlled method, and I started to learn all sorts of different of his training modalities and so forth. And it's a great brainwave state for you to create all sorts of different things for yourself. Alpha is pretty cool. I think theta, I prefer theta over alpha, but alpha is a very powerful brainwave state to be. In this state, you're going to feel completely relaxed mentally. So your mind is relaxed and your body is relaxed. It's the easiest relaxed state of being that you can be in throughout the day, anywhere at any time. Theta is a little bit, I don't want to say that it's a little more challenging, but everything is practice, okay? After working for a long period of time, as I mentioned before, if you've been working, let's say from 9 to, maybe you have a 9 to 5 job, maybe now you're working from 9 and now it's 11:30, 12 o'clock, and you're gonna now break for lunch. As soon as you stop your work and you break for lunch, your brain goes into that alpha brainwave state because you're relaxing from that intense focus where you're engaged in the beta brainwave, from low beta to higher beta to lower beta to higher beta. And then you'll drop into an alpha state the moment you get up from your desk, you walk away from the computer, stop reading your emails, stop replying to your emails, you go into that alpha brainwave state. Also, if you decide to do yoga or meditation, you start a meditation, you drip into alpha, eventually into theta, etc. The brainwave state right before you drift off into sleep, as you slow down your brainwaves. If you're beginning to go into a creative or artistic state of feeling and sensing, this is also the alpha brainwave state. Results from being in an alpha brainwave state. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you guys. You can see it a little bit better. Okay. The results from being in an alpha brainwave state. Excellent state for programming your subconscious mind. So I want you to note, you can use a theta brainwave state to program your subconscious mind. But in an alpha brainwave state, it's a slow enough brainwave state where you can take 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and in 3 minutes, you could program something into your subconscious mind. And you can count from 10 to 1, be in an alpha brainwave state, and then take a minute or 2 to program that clear intention with that elevated emotion. And you talk yourself back out and here you are back again. So it's great for programming your subconscious mind. And I want to note, all programming is reprogramming. like I mentioned before, in essence, you're overwriting, writing on top of whatever previous program was there. You're writing on top of it the program that you've chosen with intention instead of keeping whatever your default programming is, okay? This is the conscious to subconscious. It's a bridge access, this alpha brainwave state. State in which new learning occurs and state to recall previously acquired knowledge. It's magnified mental clarity and contentment, joy, and happiness. It's also the resolution, the dissolving of the fight or flight response and any feelings that you might have of panic, anxiety, nervousness, chronic pain. Yes, chronic pain can be dissolved in this alpha brainwave state. Elevated vitals. What are your vitals? Your pulse, your respiration, your heartbeat, your blood pressure, etc. Increases your athletic performance. A lot of athletes will on purpose get into an alpha brainwave state to increase their performance, to make themselves faster, etc. Increase their effectiveness at whatever their given sport is. Increasing motivation, inspiration, creativity, intuitive guidance, energy, and happiness. Performance enhancing state of healing, motivation, inspiration, creativity, energy as a direct result of optimizing your neurochemicals throughout the body. So in this state, as well as the theta brainwave state, you are neurochemically increasing your vasopressin, your benzodiazepine, your dimethyltryptamine, your dopamine, your epinephrine. There's a whole, it's like a cascade. It's like once you're in that meditative state and you are now pinging your pineal gland, it's like like if you see a row of dominoes, you hit one over and then it's like a chemical reaction. One creates the next, creates the next, creates the next. If you want to read some great literature that expands and talks more specifically about this, I would highly encourage you to get the book Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's very comprehensive in his book, and you'll have the lowdown there. The next brainwave state we have is the beta brainwave state. This is the brainwave state that we're currently in as we are learning this information. And this is the state at which your frequency is going 15 to up to 40 cycles a second. So you have lower beta, which is the lower part of the graph, which is closer to 15 to 20, and then 20 to 40 cycles a second is when your brain is beating even faster. And this is while you're awake and you're working. If you're rushing to go somewhere, you're in that higher beta brainwave frequency because you're like thinking fast and it's like you're on your toes, you're in that high alert state. If you're in the emergency room, it's that, beta brainwave state. You got to think faster. You're thinking diagnostically. You're accessing that left brain all the time. When you're teaching and speaking, you're debating and negotiating, you're bantering, you're arguing. If you're in a conversation, if you're really focused and entrenched and just hyper-focused on something specific, maybe you have something with tiny little detail that you're trying to work at. Any kind of problem solving. If you're learning something new, this is a beta brainwave state. So what are the results of being in that beta brainwave state? Some of the results are you're going to have concentration. You're going to be very focused. You're going to be very alert, wide-eyed. You're going to have improved logic, improved reasoning, your critical thinking, and your productivity. Now, I'm going to say that once you learn to access the higher states of being like theta and gamma, you can quantum leap your productivity where you can do things exponentially faster, more effectively in what seems like superhuman ways. That defies any kind of reasoning or logic or anything that you could ever make happen. And that's why we want to learn to do state control, learn how to get into a theta brainwave state. Okay. Now, if you are in your beta brainwave state too much, that can lead to foggy brain or the inability to focus, or it can lead to creative blocks. Sometimes people are creatively blocked where they get writer's block, or maybe in business, all of a sudden things are flat and stale where everything that they used to do before, now nothing seems to work. And now it's like, not only are things flat, but maybe they're even starting to go downhill because you have some sort of block. And that's because you've been in too high of a beta brainwave state. Being stressed out, feelings of being overwhelmed, full of anxiety, and it can obviously lead to burnout. There is a slight little differentiation also, I want to say, with the male brain versus the female brain, because the female brain has the capacity, when we look at the human brain, we divide it up into 8 different regions of the brain. And if you take a female brain and a male brain, you'll see that a female brain, you'll have multiple regions of the brain will light up all at the same time. Whereas in a male brain, only one region of the brain will light up at a time. So it used to be, I think now it's probably not politically correct, but it used to be that they would say it's impossible for a man to be overwhelmed. It's very rare for a man to be overwhelmed. Now, why is that? Because a man's brain, they'll turn on the left brain, they're thinking, they're problem solving, and their emotional center is off. So they don't feel overwhelmed. They only do one thing at a time. Women, and this is biology, in order for humanity to thrive, for us to be able to have a human species where we have men and women and we have procreation and balancing everything that needs to be balanced, the female brain needed to be designed so that multiple regions of the brain could light up simultaneously. And a male's brain, in order to protect and to provide for the family, they needed to not be overwhelmed at any point in time. And then just the fight or flight response would go out, and they would, go out and attack and defend and do whatever, kill whatever deer or lion or bear, and then bring back the kill to feed the family. So I don't want anyone to think that, oh, the female brain is superior to the male brain, or the male brain is superior to the female brain. They're both equally brilliant. They're exactly as they should be. Otherwise, they wouldn't be that way. They serve a purpose, and they are complementary to each other, which is why men and women, need each other and want each other overall. So, let's go into the next. So I just wanted to address the thing about overwhelm, because if you notice, very rarely will you hear a man say that they're overwhelmed. Almost, I don't know if I've ever heard a man say that they're overwhelmed, but generally speaking, it's not in their vocabulary. And it used to be, in fact, I'm just recalling right now, John Gray, who is the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, 25 years ago, when he went to write Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, one of the words that he used was overwhelm and overwhelmed. And one of the New York Times editors told him is that it was a male editor, said that the word overwhelm and overwhelmed didn't exist. and he has a predominantly female clientele who he has done counseling with. He trains men and women, but most of his private clients that were one-on-one were mostly women. And women very much expressed to him the feeling of overwhelm, of juggling family and home and spouse and, all the nonprofit stuff that they're doing and their volunteer things and juggling all these plates at the same time. Whereas men, they only do one thing at a time. And if they feel that it's starting to get too much, they never get to overwhelm. They automatically shut down and walk away, and they take their time out. They go into their cave. They go to the gym, they work out, they go watch their sports, they go hang out with their buddies. Whereas women, because we have 2, 3, 4 regions of the brain lighting up at the same time, we're having a conversation on the phone, cooking dinner, and you got Johnny that's about to fall off the top of the refrigerator because like a little monkey, he managed to get up there, who knows how. And then so while you're cooking, you're able to grab Johnny by the arm, put him down on the floor so he doesn't break his neck while you keep talking to your friend on the phone and you're still cooking dinner. That's why the brain is wired in a female to be that way in order to be capable of pulling that off. A man is not going to be able to operate in that manner. They're not going to become overwhelmed, because that's why if you're having a deep, engaging conversation with a man that's involving his left brain and he's thinking very specifically about something, and you tell him, well, what are you feeling? Usually they'll tell you nothing, because they aren't feeling anything. They're thinking. Conversely, if you are in a feeling state with him and he is talking more from what he's feeling, and you ask him, maybe he's just watching sports and he's not feeling or thinking anything, and you ask him, well, what are you thinking? And they say nothing. They're being literal. When they say nothing, they literally are not thinking of anything. They're not thinking of anything at all. They're not engaging any aspect of the brain. The brain is relaxed, and it's because of the wiring. That's why they don't get overwhelmed. It's not biologically possible. Now, there's always an exception. If you have a male who is very much in his, has high estrogen levels, then I think that there's going to be a little bit of, there's variances there. But generally speaking, the male brain, you only have one region at a time. I mean, you see that in the brain scans as opposed to the female brain. So all of this causes biochemical and neurochemical and mitochondrial regulation and dysregulation, depending on the state in which you are. If you're at a very high beta brainwave state, it can cause mitochondrial dysregulation, a change in your circadian rhythms. It can really do a number on you. And for people who are in high stress jobs, we now know there's a doctor named Dr. Jacob Montgomery, who I absolutely love. He's a quantum ophthalmologist, and he normally speaks to large groups of ophthalmologists throughout the country. And he talks about the mitochondrial dysregulation and how that has to do with little organelles. Organelles are tiny organs inside of your cell. And that is primarily affected coming genetically from your mother's side of your genetics, not from your father's side. This is not to point blame to mothers. This is just, again, this has to do with biology. So if you're in a high stress state all the time, you're going to have, the negative effect of being in such high beta brainwave state is that you're going to have some of this chemistry alteration not in your favor. And the quickest way to get that back in balance is to have state control. So the last brainwave state is your gamma brainwave state. Okay. Whoa, what the heck happened there? I meant to make it bigger, not disappear. Okay, so the last brainwave state is your gamma brainwave state. And in your gamma brainwave state, this is the highest brainwave state. We talked about earlier how you can go from 32 hertz all the way to 100 hertz. We now know that you can actually go to up to 400 plus hertz, which is very, very rare in the general population of 7 billion people and growing on the planet. However, amongst a group of experienced and even novice meditators, it's not uncommon to see people go 200, 300, 400 plus hertz in the gamma brainwave states. As you're going from theta, they go into gamma, and then boom, they have a profound mystical experience. They have a biological upgrade, and all sorts of very cool, exciting things happen. In this gamma brainwave state, perception is acutely increased and is at an altered peak state of mental performance, where you are able to link and sync information from all parts of your brain. And some may argue your mind, which is not the same thing as, I want to separate, you have the brain that's the organ, and then your mind, which scientists have not been able to prove where the mind actually is, but the mind uses the organ of the brain. Okay. And so you're able to use information from the different parts of your entire brain, as well as your mind, which is now unlimited because it's in 5D and it's tapped into the infinite. And when you're in that state, you can also tap into an infinite well of other dimensions and all sorts of other experiences and realities. And you can understand it, not necessarily from a left brain state, but you will have a knowing, a gnosis of it, okay? You'll also be able to process. What is processing? Processing, for me, the best way to language it, to explain it to you that I understand it as, when you're processing information, you're digesting information. Just as you digest food in your body, you are digesting these high levels of information, of knowledge, of knowing, of experiences, so that you can now use it in 3D. Not really having any reference in your lifetime to know how to do it, but yet you still have a knowingness how to go about it. At least you'll know the next 1, 2, or 3 steps to take to get to whatever that final goal, whatever that final dream, that final task that you have, whether it's short-term, midterm, long-term, doesn't matter, okay? So that's what processing is. It's a digestion of that state of being. You're learning, you're problem solving, you're experiencing, you're in a very deep meditative state. People who are experienced meditators, of whether it's Dr. Joe or others, monks from different modalities and mystics from all sorts of different modalities, have been in this gamma brainwave state. It's not that uncommon. And you don't have to have been meditating for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, contrary to what popular literature will tell you. I will tell you from firsthand experience. I know people who never meditated in their life, and in the span of less than 7 days, they experienced this gamma brainwave state and were able to go from never meditating to meditating for 4 or 5 hours at a stretch, and now meditate every day at 4 a.m. with a group of individuals where they're all men, they all get together every single day at 4 a.m. and they meditate an hour and a half to 2 every morning. And they're having spectacular, phenomenal results in their business and their health and all sorts of different areas. It's really pretty fun. And they didn't meditate before. And so that shows you that it debunks the myth that you need to go to the Himalayas, or you need to have meditated for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, or you need to have been, celibate for 10 years. None of that is true, okay? The mind is unlimited. The brain is unlimited, okay? So being excessively in your gamma state, obviously, we know, I talked about very briefly how, if you're having a grand mal seizure, if you're having a seizure of any sort, oftentimes it shows like a gamma brainwave state. However, we're not going to get into very much of that aspect of it in this talk. I want to talk about the beneficial gamma brainwave state. However, if you're too much in your gamma brainwave state, it can lead to nervousness, panic, anxiety disorders, sleep disruptions, poor sleep hygiene, problems, nightmares, impulse control, impulsive behavior, bursts of anger, hypervigilance, jitteriness. So if you get the jitters, agitated depression, chronic nerve pain. Yes, it can affect your nerves and even create different states of neuropathy. So those are some of the symptoms of being excessively in high gamma state. If you're not in your gamma state enough, it can lead to depression, attention deficit disorder, chronic pain, and insomnia. Gamma brainwave states are still being researched. And I want to give you some of the healthy benefits of gamma state, because as we talked before, in meditation, we can touch this gamma state. And I've actually seen people who there is a UK doctor where during one of the week-long events, one of the reasons why she became a doctor was because she had terrible eczema. And during the week-long, I don't remember what day it was that we were at the week-long, but the bottom line is she went from having her arms covered with eczema to her entire skin was like, her skin was like completely normal. And I was so shocked by that because I thought, okay, if you heal yourself from any kind of a skin condition, I thought it would take at least, 2 weeks to see the skin turn over, but that's obviously not true. Anything is possible. So some of the benefits and healthy results of gamma state are not just healing, but increased compassion, empathy, happiness, increased intelligence, having high amounts of self-control and feelings of just pure happiness and joy, and an increased awareness through your 5 senses. So I put here 5 senses, but I would dare say that it would be an increased awareness in, I would say, more than 5 senses, because your intuition is what some people call your 6th sense. And I think there's a sensing that we don't even have language or any kind of verbiage to explain that sensation that you sometimes have in those meditative states where you're going from theta into gamma. Okay, so state control. So let's get back to, now that we've reviewed these, we're getting ready here to wrap this up. But the quickest way to change your state control, we talked about being in that theta brainwave state, going from alpha into theta. And the quickest thing to do is to change your physiology. So oftentimes people who are, let's say you're sad for no apparent reason. Maybe you just woke up literally on the wrong side of the bed. I think I shared with you guys, it was last month, I think it may have even been at the beginning of this month, but I think it was actually in March. I had one day where I actually fell asleep on my sofa, and instead of waking up in my bed, I woke up on the sofa instead of the bed. And instead of normally doing my normal morning routine, just waking up on a sofa, instead of waking up in my bed, I woke up literally on the wrong side of the sofa, and I was kind of sad and kind of dejected and mopey gropey for no apparent reason. And I thought, why am I feeling so crummy? And it was a Sunday morning. And I'm like, wait a minute. So as soon as I became alert, I did my 25 as slow as I can deep breaths, because that's part of my morning routine. But I didn't do the PSMO. I just did the breath, which is great because I alkalized my body. But somehow doing the PSMO, which is my morning routine, totally fell off my radar. So after I was completely aware and I finished all 25 breaths, I was like, I had like saggy baggy butt, where I was like dragging my butt into the bathroom, into the kitchen. And I was just like feeling really sad. Nothing bad had happened. There was no reason for me to feel sad. Everything has been going phenomenal in my life. So I was like, why does everything suck? Why does everything seem so much heavier? And even my body, maybe my position wasn't the best sleeping on the sofa. Was that sofa right there? But the bottom line is, I hadn't felt sad in probably the better part of a year. And so it kind of took me aback and kind of really bothered me for a bit. And so as I kind of went on my day and I started to make my tea and so forth, it dawned on me. I go, oh my gosh, it's amazing how just changing, it's not just changing my venue, because heaven knows I travel enough. I wake in different beds depending on what hotel I'm staying in, frequently enough where you would think that would change it up for me. But just instead of waking up in a bed, I woke up on a sofa. So subconsciously, just my waking up in a sofa was enough to knock me off of my routine, where I didn't do the PSMO like I normally did. And so it was like 2 hours into the day before I figured that out. 2 hours. 2 freaking hours. I was mopey gropey on a Sunday morning until it finally dawned on me. I'm like, wait a minute. I haven't done the PSMO. All I have to do is do the PSMO. I immediately stood in front of this mirror. I like to do the PSMO in front of the mirror, and I have a mirror in my bedroom. So I just did it in front of this mirror here. And as soon as I did that, I felt immediately better. I did my physiological size. I did the maniocular technique, and then I did the lymphatic flush. I was done, felt better. And I thought, wow, that's all it took to knock me off of my routine, was to wake up on a sofa instead of a bed. I thought, I need to share this with others, because oftentimes we're in a different state of being. Maybe, I don't know what it is that might be different in your environment, that might be different in your experience, that might throw you off. Doesn't matter. The moment you become aware, that is the first stage and the first step to you being empowered to take a hold of your state control. The first thing you can do is to physically do something different with your body. As you do the physiological size, 3 sets of 3, that's the first thing. It's going to affect your body, changing the rate at which you breathe. And because it's changing your physiology by breathing differently, it automatically will sedate your hippocampus and stop any fight or flight response, any negativity that's going on at that moment in time. Doing the maniocular technique, same thing. Now you are crossing over from your right brain hemisphere to your left brain hemisphere, and you are literally like a window shield wiper. Maybe you have a windshield on your car, and maybe you haven't moved your car for 2 days, and you've got some dirt and debris on your windshield. Now you are wiping it clear with window shield wiper fluid, and you're resolving and dissolving any negative thoughts, feelings, or emotions, any anxiety, any nervousness, any self-criticism, any overactive ego talk will get wiped out, cleared out since the last time you did the PSMO, which is why I do mine every morning. Sometimes I do it twice a day, but usually it's just once in the morning. That's it. Wipe it out, wipe it out. But I'm changing my physiology, because this is not a normal action for most of us, right? So I'm following it with my eyes, left to right, 10 times, 3 sets of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pause. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pause. Third and last time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pause. For those of you who want to step up the PSMO, you can do it also with your left hand. You can also do top to bottom, right, upper right to lower left. So you're moving your eyes in every direction. That will increase. It adds blood flow, obviously, to all the muscles in the whole region of the eye, which is directly connected into your brain. Your vision will get better. It also has to do with the tracking element of your eyes. There's a whole other, I could do a whole hour on that. We're not going to get into that aspect of it. Dr. Andrew Huberman of the Stanford Research Institute, who is the professor of ophthalmology and neurology at Stanford Medical School, talks at great extent about this, as does Dr. Jacob Montgomery, who is a quantum ophthalmologist. You can look them up both on YouTube. Phenomenal. Dr. Huberman also has great Instagram reels talking about this type of information. The tracking element, bringing blood flow. Most people don't exercise their eyes in any way, shape, or form. This is a fantastic aspect to not only physiologically from the muscle aspect of your eyes is going to increase blood flow, increase muscle tone, but there's also all sorts of emotional neurosomatic benefits to it, because you're crossing over from the right-hand side to the left-hand side of the brain, relinking, resyncing both sides of the brain, et cetera, et cetera. I could get very nerdy and very geeky about that. We want to keep this simple. So that's the second component. And then the third part of your state control. Now, I want to hit the pause button here before we go into the lymphatic flush aspect of it. Some of you who are watching this, not all, but some of you may be in a position where you can't get up and bounce on the balls of your feet. If that is your case, maybe you're in a wheelchair, maybe you're in a hospital bed, whatever the circumstances are, know that just by doing it in your mind, it works just as effectively. And I have firsthand experience with people who could not do this at the beginning because they were in a coma. And they got out of the coma and were able to come home after being on a respirator with blood clots, and later reported back, yes, while in a coma, I heard the instructions. I did the PSMO all in my imagination. They said, I'm not sure if I actually physically did the physiological size. I felt as if I was, but because I was in a coma, I'm not sure. The maniocular technique, they were in a coma. They couldn't move any body part. And then there's a third aspect, which they clearly could not bounce on the balls of their feet because they were hooked up to a respirator and IVs and being monitored. They weren't expected to survive. So know that you can go from that state of not being well to getting yourself out where you are healthy and you're able to come home and kick that illness in the butt, okay? So I'm not going to jump around and do the lymphatic flush at this point in time, but you guys know, you guys have watched the PSMO method. If not, I'll put that in our Facebook group so that you can tap into that and you can watch. I have a playlist of 3 or 4 videos that explain the PSMO method, and you can do that at any point in time. So does anybody have any questions? Any comments, any feedback? I also just want to say that just moving your body, standing up straight, stretching your body. If you're a little more limber and you're a little more, I don't even want to say more flexible, but like in yoga, there's happy baby where we all see babies will hold their feet and, they roll left to right, back and forth. You do that on your bed. Sometimes it could be uncomfortable if you do it on tile, potentially depending on the thickness of your rug. Do it in your bed. I do it in the bed, on my bed before I get out of bed, because it feels good to stretch and it kind of moves your energy around. But that's part of your state control and part of your keeping your body tuned up, if that makes any sense. Jan, I see that you're unmuted. Did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I just wanted to say this was it was nice to go over this information again. I think it's all important. And thank you for reminding me of different things I can do, techniques.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much, Jan. I was going to ask you, do you have any feedback about maybe the beta brainwave state because you're an emergency room doctor. So we have some healthcare practitioners that watch these on replay because they're working right now. So is there anything that you want to talk and address and maybe point out to them as a physician that works in the emergency room that might be of benefit to some of the healthcare providers?
Honestly, I think you explain things very well. I truly think that if people can learn some of your techniques that you put forth, when they need to lower that excessive beta, like the PMSO, because it's so quick, if they'll just learn that and get used to doing it and refer back to it, it would help, because there are times that we just get so overloaded that we need some self-care to help balance our own state.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's everybody's challenge, is remembering sometimes we have these tools. And so like when I first, had the PSMO come into my experience, where I realized it's like, oh, this is something that I can use, and then I can use with my private clients. At first, the first challenge was remembering to use it for myself.
Yeah.
So the way I helped myself remember was I took an eyeliner in my bathroom and I just wrote PSMO. So when I went to brush my teeth, I'm like, oh, that's right, I got to do this.
Yeah.
And then I had another window in my room away from the bathroom that would remind me if something would come up, I would see the writing on there of the PSMO. I'm like, oh, that's right, PSMOs. I had some jarring information. I had whatever. If all of a sudden I had pain, I would just go, oh, that's right, I could use that. I could use this to resolve and dissolve this. And so then after a while, then you you start to remember because you see it around. You could write it on your refrigerator, on a piece of paper, or if you have sliding glass doors, again, guys or girls, for those of you who also participated in the 90-day HeartMate consciousness experiment, you'll know that I told men and women alike, go to the 99-cent store. 99-cent store is not sponsoring this, but I'm just saying, go to the 99-cent store and get a black or a brown eyeliner. Now, why am I saying that? Because it's only 99 cents and it's a eye pencil. And then, or if you can find a grease pencil elsewhere, but just take, and you can write that on your mirror in your bathroom, and any sliding glass door or window that that you'll see it, and it'll remind you, and you'll go, oh yeah, that's right, I can do this. And it takes less than 3 minutes.
I do want to say one more thing. Especially at work, for healthcare providers or anyone in a high stress situation, working 12, 14-hour days. I mean, this happened all the time. So unfortunately, I didn't have these techniques when I was practicing. But instead of using up all our energy units, this will help replenish it. And so we don't have to get as exhausted and tired if we replenish ourselves at intervals, even once during our shift or during our day or during our time.
Yes.
I think if you could put a little bracelet and write PMSO on it. All these bracelets that people wear for all these other causes. You're a good cause. And so you could invest in yourself that way.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We might have to take that up. And I know that I have several nurses that are working, some in ER, some in other different departments, where 2 or 3 of them, they'll like all at the same time, they'll go by the double doors at the end of their hallway, and they'll just do the PSMO, take 2-3 minutes, and then boom, they'll do it. And it's like, they're like recharged. And even though, they may have just lost someone, which is very upsetting. I don't know if the general public knows how upsetting it is.
Yeah.
To lose someone that sometimes you worked really hard, or it's equally daunting when you have someone who you just didn't get them soon enough. And so they just slipped away and you barely got a chance to really even work on them. And you're like, if I just had 3 to 5 minutes before, I could have saved them. And so it really does affect you. And sometimes you have multiple people like that in your experience, and you're carrying that around time after time. This is one way to let that go, resolve it, increase your energy, and legitimately feel better in every way, shape, or form, so that it's a gift to you and you're able to do your best also for the next person that comes into your experience.
Yeah.
So, well, we are at the end of our training for today. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in, tapping in, turning on today to this training. We have, I think, one more left. I'm trying to see, today's the 20th. So we have a week from Wednesday is the next Intuition Manifesto Masterclass. And then I'll be on hiatus for the month of May, because I will be gone, as you guys know. Hopefully, Dr. Jan and I will be going at a vibrational medicine class in Costa Rica. I'm really looking forward to that. But does anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns? Let me see if there's any. I'm going to close this and let me see if there's no questions in the chat. Since I don't see any questions in the chat, I am going to say.
This is Terry.
Oh, yes.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, such an amazing class, just filled with so much information. And because I was kind of a little bit checked out because I don't feel well, I was more in the theta state, and I picked up things I think I might have missed had I been sitting down staring at the screen, which was really fascinating.
Wow. Well, that is so fantastic. Terry is a very experienced meditator, so I know that she knows what the theta brainwave state is like. So that is so fantastic, so cool to hear, Terry. So thank you for letting us know about that. That is awesome. See, things have a magical way of always working themselves out for the best.
Well, I am on a lot of Zooms, and a couple months ago, it kind of came to me that I feel like I would absorb more if I turned off the screen and didn't watch it. And this just proved my intuition right, but I always felt kind of compelled to be present for the moderator's sake or for everybody else's sake. So it looks like I'm engaged, but I am engaged, and I think I absorb more today than I ever have, which is just intriguing to me.
So that touches upon one of the things that we talked about earlier that I mentioned. If in the 3D world, it could be that your primary learning modality is auditory and maybe visual is second, or maybe visual is even third for you.
Actually, visual is first, but because I turned off the visual because I didn't look at the screen, then the other senses were able to kick in more. That's what it feels like.
Okay, so so if you feel that that's the case, then that's actually the case. So I love the fact that you're trusting your intuition, knowing that for you, visual is normally first, but because you turned off the visual, then auditory became first. And isn't it amazing that you were able to absorb and slip into that theta state of brainwave so that you could absorb more? And you have this as a point of contrast from the previous Intuition Manifesto classes, master classes, as well as the other Zooms that you've done. So you have a point of comparison, which I think this should speak loudly, no pun intended, speak loudly to everyone who is watching this live or on the rebroadcast, the replay, because paying attention to how you feel differently in one state versus the other is feedback for you, how you feel. Doesn't matter how others feel. But Terry, you're doing an excellent job of noticing that, becoming aware and realizing, for me, wow, this was spot on for me. My intuition said to turn off the screen. I did that. I slipped into theta state. I know what that feels like. Bam.
Yeah, because I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was done.
For me, when I'm visual, I think I think I'm more than certain than I think. I recognize when I am visual, I go to my left brain.
Ooh, so wow. So that is awesome. That's great biofeedback. So you, in essence, were in a meditation throughout this whole broadcast in the theta brainwave state. You acquired knowing yourself now better, recognizing this. So
Yeah.
This is genius. This is part of what Jose Silva says is when you access greater parts of your brain, that is genius. So by definition, you're a genius.
Oh, well, thank you.
That is wonderful. Oh my gosh. I'm so grateful that you shared that with us. Okay, so unless there's any other questions or comments, I think I will say good night to my friends, my gems, sending you heartfelt love. Love you guys so much. Like my friend Suzu in Korea says, little heart. I got you guys. I really do love you guys so much. I really appreciate, adore, and respect you. And thank you for tuning in, tapping in tonight to this Intuition Manifesto Masterclass. And I look forward to seeing you soon again. And I will be putting this on the Facebook Intuition Manifesto private group. And you guys know where to get me. Ciao for now, my friends and gems. Here's the red button.